Welcome back to the Quiet on Set podcast powered by Cineman. I'm Ewan and as always, I'm joined by Lachlan.
On episode 150, we'll have a moment of silence. Why? Because a movie I was anticipating for this year's release has been delayed. Very sad.
It's very sad. Then I got a bit of an in-depth look of what's been happening with the WGA strike over the month of August. And I got some brief thoughts on Blue Beetle, Vacation Friends 2, and you are so not invited to my Bat Mitzvah.
Why not? I didn't even know you were Jewish.
I converted because Adam Sandler, turns out he's Jewish, and I was like, I want to be in one of those Happy Madison productions.
Oh, shocker. Finally, Ewan and I will be discussing the latest A24 flick out on VOD already, Past Lives.
Yes, very much looking forward to that. So let's cue up the intro and get into the show. We are professionals.
This is a professional podcast.
Yes. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Hello there. Which actually,
did you
this
get
is gonna
me a hat as well?
Yes.
So I've got Dune Cam. It's just a camera with my Dune steelbook.
All right, welcome back, Lachlan. It is a sad week, and I think, do we want to just...
I don't know where to look. I'm worried.
Yeah, do you want to address the new camera angle?
Yeah, so anyone who's watching the video, I've put the camera smack bang in the middle of the desk, and I hate it because I don't like my monitors being separated. I've got two, and it's in the middle, and I don't know where to look. Do I look down? Is this weird? Is this weird, Ewan?
It's like that
frog
thing,
like,
that meme with the stretched eyes.
I don't know what to do because it makes me uncomfortable with the camera right in the middle of my desk. I prefer it to be either back where it was up there, but it's very different. I usually, in the same spot, this is how I sit, and it's like a side profile, but now I just don't know. I want it to be a bit more like you, Ewan, I guess. I want it to be a bit more symmetrical.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I specifically set it up like this. I don't know, when I look at your screen right now, I feel like you're in one of the sequels to one of those horror flicks that was like completely set on a screen, and I feel like something's gonna pop out behind you or something like that. Yeah. Something creepy. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe you change it up a bit in the coming weeks. That's always exciting to see visual changes there. But we have sad news, and that is that Dune 2 has been pushed back to next year. I believe it's moved from November to March 2024, and would have been one of the big releases for the end of the year, and has now moved out of 2023. It was the biggest film, I think, set to premiere for the rest of the year, and unfortunately, because the strikes are still not nearing any end. We'll get into that in actually a second. I'll give you a bit of a breakdown. Similar to the COVID era, movies are getting pushed again, which is so harmful, especially considering that it's been on a bit of an upswing with Barbie and Oppenheimer recently, and they kind of are losing that momentum again, and it's just really, really stupid and frustrating. But Lachlan, between the two of us, you're the bigger Dune fan. Do you have any other thoughts on this delay?
There was gonna come a time where these strikes and the disagreements that each party has with each other is going to cause issues to people outside this world. Now, for us, we kind of saw this one coming. I'm not gonna lie. We did see movie delays happening, and I think it was like less than a month ago they actually said no, there's no plans to actually push Dune back. Shocker, they have. So now the strikes are not only affecting people who are having their not being paid residuals and all this stuff that's happening within the strikes. We've now got films being delayed, which are going to affect greater audiences, and that kind of sucks because we're going to be having less productions coming out in the next 2 years, because this strike has been going on for a while and productions have been delayed. So it's already taken effect with, we're not going to be getting as much stuff coming out, and I can see that affecting money revenue for these companies because, man, I'm ready to cancel Disney Plus once Ahsoka ends. Yeah,
I recently had an issue where I actually got like a notification that something's wrong with my Disney Plus account, and it's now locking everyone out. I know you were initially on my plan as well, but it's now locked everyone out who was on my plan, and wouldn't let them log in even if I gave them like all of the necessary information. I never liked the Disney Plus service. I think it is dog shit. It looks really bad. It's got like a bad algorithm, and it plays really actually low quality in my opinion compared to like some other streamers. And yeah, Disney is still one of the people holding this up, and I think that Warner Brothers here is, I think, strategically using a big movie like this to get the frustration up of the strikes ongoing, and trying maybe to get a deal obviously more favored for them, because the general audiences, as much as they support the writers and especially the actors in the strike here vocally, because they are more known, the frustration also lands probably before it lands on someone, like for a general audience on the studio, it lands with the actors because they are like the identifiable faces here. But it's frustrating when we get to, actually I'll talk about that in a second. I do want to talk about some trailers before I do that, give you a strike update. But the way that the AMPTP has been behaving is a bit childish, to be honest. They're just not really good people. They're just kind of money-hungry lizards, in my opinion. They're just like, ugh, really don't like him. But there were two trailers that looked kind of interesting. First up was Rebel Moon from Zack Snyder. And you said that you are looking forward to this one quite a bit. Seeing the trailer, I was like, wait, what? This looks so much better than I expected. Lachlan, what did you make of the trailer?
Man, it got me so hyped. I want to see him fly. You know, he can do some pretty incredible stuff, Zack Snyder, from a visual standpoint. And you and I both love that kind of stuff when it comes to our movies. But knowing that he pitched this idea as a Star Wars movie, and now they were like, nah, and he can do whatever he wants with it, I'm hoping it's like an R-rated Star Wars flick, because there are lightsabers in the film, and there's like flying creatures in the film. I mean, I'm losing my mind. So I know that we spoke recently about what's the next big like franchise. Man, if this movie can like explode and then Netflix do spin-offs and they're all by Zack Snyder and this is all he does for the rest of his life, yeah, man, I'm happy. I'll be happy.
I think like the funniest thing was coming out of all of this is like that I saw on X or on Twitter or whatever you want to name it, is that there was already like an interview with Zack Snyder where he said like, oh yeah, I got a director's cut that has like another hour of it. It was like, fucking hell, you're on Netflix, man. It's so annoying. Just make the movie.
Release the Snyder cut. Release the Snyder cut. Man, I just want him to do Snyder cuts his entire life. I don't want anyone to be cutting his stuff for theatrical releases. I want to see his version every time.
Yeah, I'm just look. I think he's not Jewish, but I'd love to see like a documentary style thing where it's about like his son, and then it's no early on, and it's a Snyder cut, and it goes up and cuts the fucking foreskin of his. That would be the ultimate conclusion.
That is not where I thought that joke was gonna go.
No, I'm just. I'm sick of it. I think Netflix is the perfect platform though for this, where you just like do it while it's happening, and you could have two versions up where it's like, hey, one of them is an extended cut. None of the streamers are actually like really doing that, where they have commentaries and stuff like that available. I think someone like Zack Snyder would be the perfect entryway, because there's a ton of interest from his fans as well to actually do something like this. But knowing Netflix, because they're stupid, they probably won't be doing that. But that, I think that would be like the best way to go about it. Have like, yeah, something for the Snyder heads specifically, and then the reveal as well. It's going to be a two-parter. What do you think about this? Like we've had way more two-parters in recent years again.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great move, because it's just they realized they had a lot of content and they can't do it in one film. You can't do a 4-hour film and people are going to watch it every time. The Snyder Cut for Justice League, as much as I rant on about it, it's not for everybody because it's too long of a film. But what you do realize is that, what I should say is that they have realized they have too much content. They don't want to cut it. They negotiate a deal where they can do 2 separate films, and that just is going to make it better. Like, imagine them trying to do like both A New Hope and I don't know, Empire Strikes Back, and also squeeze that into like a 4-hour film. I kind of pulled myself
Wait,
back.
what's your point, though?
I was thinking like, could A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back be in one film? And I was thinking about all the fluff that are in those films. So maybe they could do it as one long film, but I'd still prefer it as a trilogy. But anyway,
I mean, yeah,
I'm glad it's two-parter.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like one continued story broken up. It's more in that vein where like something like your example here. I think there's a couple of years between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Back. But yeah, I think it's also interesting that they're doing the thing that Across the Spider-Verse would have loved to have done. They got like a year pod, right? In this, it's only like 4 months, which goes alongside recent Netflix strategy to like space out their content maybe like a month and a half to 2 months apart. So I assume it's to boost like subscription and to counteract just the binge model a bit, because they are dropping all of this stuff, right? Not week to week, but in one go. And if they split it up maybe in 2 goes, then it stays a bit more in the zeitgeist. But I mean, the turnaround for the only show, which we'll get to a bit more in what we've been watching, that has kind of had a bit of a staying power in recent memory is The Bear. Apart from like the stuff that just ended last May, I think that one kind of stuck around week to week, and people have been talking about it longer. But yeah, that's Rebel Moon, releases later this year on Netflix, and yeah, looking forward to this one. I wouldn't have thought that I'm looking forward to a Zack Snyder film, but I'm actually kind of keen, especially now that like Ahsoka has come out and it's
one
been pretty
of
promising.
One of us.
Okay, yeah, sure. You can count me in. I wouldn't say I'm an ally or a friend, but I'm neither a foe as well. And that's another trailer called Foe, from Amazon Studios with Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal. So you already got me hella interested for this one, and it's like more of those low-key, what is it called? A low-key sci-fi, or like it's not lo-fi. That's a music style. What are they called? Like when there's like a background of something science fiction going on in the story, but it's more about like the interpersonal relationship. It's more about the drama. I think there's like a specific type of name for that type of subgenre. But this is like more my speed. It looks to me like there's a bit much going on, where like there's an explosion of emotions, where I would kind of love to see something maybe a bit more subtle. But what did you make of the trailer?
I liked it. I'm keen. This is kind of the movie that I like, so I will definitely be waiting for it.
I'll be looking forward to this one as well, so go check them out yourself. And Lachlan, I think you have a news item you want to get to before we get to the writer's
just
strike.
a quick one, because this one really pisses me off, and I feel like I need to bring it up because it really is annoying. Funnily enough, we're talking about Disney Plus earlier. Disney will no longer be releasing DVDs and Blu-rays in Australia, and it really
like not at all
annoys me. Not at all.
Wait, but they just announced like that they're doing like steelbook or like DVD Blu-rays for WandaVision and stuff like that, and there was the controversy that there's no disc in it. Not doing it anything at all. No physical media.
There's gonna be those releases, I believe, but they're gonna end up no longer releasing physical media in Australia after the Guardians of the Galaxy run this month. It wasn't super successful, but it's a little bit annoying because one, there's a massive collecting standpoint to physical media, and if you compare physical media to streaming, physical media beats streaming quality by a fucking mile, which is why I have a bunch of movies that I absolutely adore on physical disc, even though I can watch it at any point in time on any device anywhere in the world because I have it on streaming. But that's not my point. My point is that there is a version of the film that is always going to be superiorly better, and that is going to be physical media. So it annoys me because Disney's obviously a massive corporation. There's a lot of films that come under the Disney head, and that's going to be a little bit annoying, especially because we all know that Australian internet isn't the greatest fucking thing in the world, and relying on streaming is not a way of supporting your films post-launch, because as we all know, like physical media is where you can pick up some of the box office misses, and they're not going to have that anymore. They're just going to go straight to Disney Plus. So that's just a little news story that from Australia that probably no one cares about unless you're from Australia. But man, I'm going to be so mad if I can't get certain movies on 4K.
It's got larger implications for where they want to be heading. Like they did something like this 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago already, where they like were really limiting the amount of VHS tapes that were in circulation for their classical movies. So like my an ex-girlfriend of mine, their parents had like a collection of a bunch of like old school Disney movies, and like a bunch of them were like a couple $1,000 worth because they were so rare. And I think it's like that kind of forced thing that they wanted to create here. I think here it's more about like driving them all to this like one thing they really want to work, and that's Disney Plus. But as we've seen with Netflix, there is like a limit to it, where it is a subscriber cap, and once you reach that, what the fuck do we do? Oh my god, I don't know. This is just bad news all around. This week is a bad week for news, man. Apart from the trailers.
The craziest thing about this is I was reading a lot of forums about it, and I know that I've joking about like, you know, sailing the 7 seas in the past to get certain things, but there is going to be a resurgence in piracy in the next 5 years for sure.
I mean, because it's the contract of preservation of preserving these things, and if you don't have something like a Criterion channel that preserves someone like Agnes Varda or Ingmar Bergman, or you got Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
You flex.
I had to get that from the States, by the way. It cost me so much money. Sure. And like I love that I can hold on to this like forever. Unless it breaks, it's mine. And even when you rent something like a Disney film on YouTube or in iTunes or wherever you get your movies, you're always holding on to the license that service has to that movie. You're not having it forever. It's the same system as like for games with Steam. You don't own these games. You just license them until that service is no longer provided. And for an art form like this, it's a bit of a pity that we're steering more into that direction where the studios don't really want to make an effort for people to, I guess, do that. But I guess physical media sales are also down by quite a bit. That may be the reason why they do it.
Physical media sales are down, but that is obviously from the rise of streaming services, right?
Yeah.
It's the same as like rental. Rental went down because of streaming services. Streaming services make it very easy to get it. And again, for most people, streaming is okay. Streaming is fine. The quality is fine. The TV they're watching it on is going to do enough post-processing upscaling to make it look decent. But for people who really want to enjoy the most of their films, for someone like myself, I buy it physically and I watch it on that. Like, there was the other day, we're about to go to bed and, you know, my partner's looking at watching a movie, literally goes and selects everything everywhere all at once, and I pause the movie, I walk over to the TV, I put the disc in, and I'm like, we're watching it on this, because I'm not going to watch it on something that's like less quality than something I already have. So again, there's more arguments in here for different worlds, but for people who want to watch their movies on the best quality they can, it has to be physical media. Now, it does say DVDs and Blu-rays. I don't know if they're categorizing 4K DVDs as something separate, because 4K is typically what I try to collect more than anything else, but still, some people don't have 4K players. Some people don't want, still, surprisingly, some people don't have 4K TVs. But, you know,
can't relate.
That's another story. Can't relate. I've got a great system, Adobe Atmos, Dolby Vision. It's IMAX enhanced. It's got everything I need.
Yeah, we could not leave our place for like a week, and we would be totally fine with the amount of stuff that we could do in those systems. But yeah, I like that little tangent that we went on, because physical media is another thing that is not really discussed, obviously, in the strikes right now, because it doesn't really have like someone connected to it in a guild that could strike for it. But it's another interesting discussion point, which this was already kind of a mini discussion time that we did right there. But I want to give you a bit of an update on the strikes, and specifically the strike of the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, with the SAG. There's no update. There's nothing in sight. No meetings. But over the month of August, there were a bunch of meetings between WGA and the AMTPT or AMPTP. It's I don't even want to know what that stands for, but it's the studios. It's the studio heads on a meeting
It's
on
the
August.
Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers.
Producers. Oh, it's the producers. Right. Okay. Lovely. We love a good producer.
Have you read your show notes? Because I just read it off the show notes. Sorry, just saying. Yeah, like, I don't know what
What
that
do you
means,
mean?
and I scrolled down and I was like, it literally says right there, the Alliance of
did it?
Motion Pictures and Television Producers,
Look, I have
AMPTP.
Oh yeah, it says down there. I just saw. The thing is, we have a ton of things in here. I'll try to give you an overview in like we're done with this in less than 5 minutes. But it's going to be hard because a lot happened. But first, they did meet on August 4th. And after that meeting, no further talks were planned. On August 10th, the producers invited the writers back for another meeting. On August 11th, they proposed. They presented a new proposal. And what's notable about this is that during all of these agreements, they were during these not agreements, but during these conversations. It was planned to have kind of a media blackout, and not everything would kind of leak back and forth, so they could really focus on, I guess, coming to an agreement in the room instead of fighting it outside where it's less productive. Immediately after that meeting was struck, the studios did break that agreement and released their statement and said basically this is our final and best offer, and put it back onto the writers, making it a really unproductive session. But from those meetings, we have kind of gotten a bunch of more details of, we already knew what the writers were asking for and what the studio heads initially were offering, which was in most case just like, see you again, bye-bye, see you again in 3 years, we'll just like keep this going, we got nothing to offer. And you did see some counter offers now that were coming closer to an agreement for the studios, for the writers, mainly when it comes to salaries and all of that. I think if this strike was solely based on a pay increase, it would have been long solved. So I did write a couple of more important points down for you to, I guess, ask me what you want to know about. So to give you a list of those is I got an update on rewrites, on premium VOD and streaming services, minimum staffing, mini rooms, employment length, AI, and streaming residuals. So where do you want to start?
Let's do
Lachlan?
the VOD, the streaming.
Streaming for 300. Okay, so yes.
Go watch the Jeopardy video.
Go watch a Jeopardy video. It was a ton of fun. Anyway, so the streamers. So the writers asked for features with a budget in more than $12 million to be treated as a theatrical movie. Going alongside with that is something like streaming residuals, which would be under another point. But it also goes with an increase in wage, and the studios offered an 18.3% increase of the minimum rate for films that are 96 minutes or longer with a budget of over 40 million. So you can see that like they were asking for even smaller productions a bit more, and they offered for only the bigger productions a bit more money to those. There was also some changes to the minimum selling point for a script. I think it's like was mentioned like 100K, and a base of the residual and a residual base increase for some writers, but mostly I think this comes off as like the more well-paid writers, they would kind of see an increase of this. They tried to limit it to, I guess, fewer productions. This is, I think, like pretty much the least interesting point, because it's basically just negotiations of money, and here I can see them really coming closer without an issue where the writers might even agree to this sooner than later, to at least this point. But yeah, what's your next question, Lachlan?
I guess the streaming stuff isn't that exciting, so I'll forget streaming residuals. But let's go AI.
Well, no, the
AI.
residuals are actually interesting. I do have a quick way to tell you this, because it's essentially just about like releasing the data so you can be paid off the viewership numbers, right, off of this. And the counteroffer from the producers was, yes, we will release this data to like 6 people in your guild, in the Writers Guild, and from there on we can aim to create a residual a residual system for the next time we negotiate in 3 years. So that was what they offered. No residuals right now, but maybe in 3 years, maybe we'll give you the data to like a selective people under like an embargo that they can't leak it anywhere. So I think that's like where they're gonna keep on fighting.
AI, give me the money word right now. Artificial intelligence.
AI, yes. So the writers are requesting to have a complete ban on AI to be used for work, but also to use it to train AI. And the producers are basically saying, no, we're still gonna use it. Basically, all they offered was like, hey, AI is not the real writer. They're not gonna be credited as writers, and even if you come on to a project that has like a base from an AI script, and even if you just like rewrite it, you're not going to be paid the lower rewrite fee, not the lower rewrite salary, but as if you were writing an original script, which is, I guess it's something. It's not really what the writers want at all, but that's kind of what they offered, and they didn't really address the training AI on pre-existing, I guess, scripts. I think they're just going to do it, or like they've already been doing it, and they're gonna continue to do it. That's basically it.
Shocker. I mean, the rest of this, I have no interest in, but everyone else might. But
yeah.
Employment length.
Yeah,
give me that one.
Maybe I can give you a
TLDR. Give me that one.
TLDR, yeah. Well, it's essentially just longer employment for more people. And the response was essentially the gray room. The interesting part about this is like that they agreed for like 2 of the writers to be on for a longer period of time. The writers requested like in pre-production, during production, and in post-production, there needs to be like a number of writers that are on staff and being paid. And what they offered essentially is that like the showrunner can choose up to 2 writers for this, and it doesn't really give a clear definition of what a showrunner like is, if that's also a writer, or if like a producer can say he's a showrunner and then decides. So there's like a lot of gray wiggle room in that is a bit uncomfortable. But that's essentially the stuff with employment length. Yeah, Article 14 increase race is basically the writers under Article 14 are like the showrunners, the bigger people that are also like writers and producers, and essentially they are offering them a bit more. No surprise there from the Guild of Producers. But that's essentially also it's something that's coming out. The same goes for like employment length and minimum staffing is essentially the same. And the mini rooms is something that is like, to break it down really easy, is you employ someone for a shorter period of time for less money, and stretch it across a bunch of people instead of like having a better group of writers. And the writers want to get rid of that. The producers said no, and that's basically where they're at. There's nothing more. They said like, hey, you get deployment for 10 weeks, and I think that's pretty much it, right?
So
yeah. That's all the points.
What does this mean?
Yeah.
What does this mean? Because you're about to head off to Venice. What does this mean for Venice Film Festival? Actors there.
Yeah. So there's a couple of people under the agreement, under the interim, what's it called? Agreement that it's nothing to do with the writers, but with the actors that have agreed to it. Someone like Neon, someone like A24 has agreed to the terms for the writers and the actors. So someone like Jacob Elordi, for example, is going to be there. I think who's making Ferrari? Apparently, like Adam Driver is also going to be there, because they have been granted like a thing to like a waiver to essentially attend these festivals. So a couple of people are going to be showing up for this for the festival, but I mean, Venice is also quite international as well, so you're still gonna get to see like a bunch of the cast attend and not really be affected by the strike. But there's going to be a bigger thing for TIFF, because TIFF, Toronto, that happens like 2 days, overlaps 2 days with Venice towards the end of it. There's a ton of productions that are like smaller scale, but there's at least like actors that you've seen before in it, and they obviously won't be able to attend a bunch of that stuff. I think it gets in a gray wiggle room because like a bunch of I think in TIFF it's a bit less like that something's not attached to a studio just yet. That's more like Sundance, Cannes, less Venice. The fall festivals usually already have like distribution for their films, but if it's not distributed by anything and doesn't really have a big production company behind it, I think like there's a bit more of a wiggle room for them to still attend because it's an independent production. But it gets complicated once it's been picked up by a studio. So I don't know what they'll like plan to do for the later festivals like New York and Toronto. But yeah, I mean, the Zurich Film Festival just announced its opening film, which I'll be attending, and it's the Nick Cage film, and that's an A24 production. So Nick Cage, I don't know if he probably will attend, which is crazy, and he can. So you know, you can work around it with the studios that have agreed to it, that are like keeping this business like afloat, keeping it going. So that's great to see. But yeah, that's essentially the update. It's back to a standstill because again, the studio heads they met and basically said this is our best and final offer. I'll link below like a bunch of articles that goes through the proposal that the producers had, so you can read through it. It's a 6-page document if you're interested. Same goes for the writers in their response. But it looks like we are heading into a bit more of a blackout era, where we are not really seeing these two come to the table. It's gonna take a couple more months, I believe, which yeah is a bit frustrating. But Lachlan, that's enough from the writer strike. So let's talk about what we've been watching. All right, Lachlan, I'm interested because you had a week of actually having a bit of time to watch some series. So I want to get your thoughts on them. Where do you want to start?
Well, when you say I had time, I had to fly to Melbourne, so I had 4 hours of flight time, but 2 ways. So I had 8 hours of flying time to watch stuff, and I watched the first season of The Bear. I haven't watched season 2 yet. So don't do anything. I know that it gets wild, but I haven't watched season 2. But I watched season 1. Holy moly, is that a great show or what? Shocker. I was amazed. It was awesome. Especially because it was solid episodes up into like episode, I think it's like 7, which is shorter. It's like 20 minutes, and it's the episode where they open online orders. I think it's like the second last episode or whatever. Oh man, it blew me away. Like the whole time, it was just I love these characters, but I hate them. Why do I feel like this? These are like they're not good people. Do I want to be a chef? I don't think I do anymore. It's a crazy, crazy world that they build, especially because there is no prologue to this. You're not just thrown straight into the story midway, where he's like trying to fix this, where Bear's trying to fix this restaurant, and it really does just captivate you straight away. It really does hold you for that entire like basically 4-hour runtime of the first season. But I'm very excited to watch season 2. Very excited because I think it's going to be solid. And the season 1 finale was very satisfying. Very, very satisfying. Yeah. With the spaghetti being cooked. That was great.
Yeah.
I also, on the flight home, watched The Dry. It's an Australian movie. I don't know if you've seen it, Ewan, with Eric Banner in it.
I haven't seen it yet. No. I've seen
I'm a bit of a sucker for like thrillers, and this satisfied my needs for one of those. So I liked it. I liked it a lot. There's a second one that's literally I think just come out, so I will be definitely watching that. To the Dry? Yeah.
Oh.
It's called Force of Nature: The Dry 2.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's okay. That went under my radar.
I think it's a novel, so they're based off books.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I think there's another novel that it's based off on. So, and I kind of enjoyed the first one for like the story that it was trying to tell, and then like the little story history, I should say, but in the town. So I'll be excited to see what they do in the second one, because I don't think they can really do that again. You can't really have him have more childhood trauma elsewhere because he only was a child once. But maybe it could be. But I feel like the sequel from the trailers is a bit more psychological thrillery, because it's kind of like he's alone. But anyway, and I watched Ahsoka because I didn't have access to the preview screenings, and I got to see the first 2 episodes when they came out with everybody else. So I was part of the hype train, and I'm very pleased to say that it was great success.
Sweet.
Great success.
Yeah, I was wondering because you are more in that, like in the TV shows. You have seen like a bunch of them. So you know the animated stuff. Does it translate?
I'm the
well
Star
to live
Wars
action?
guy.
You are
I'm
the Star Wars guy. You
on this
definitely are the Star Wars
podcast.
guy. Yeah,
and I can say that it's the best piece of Star Wars content that involved Jedi. Oh, my light's falling down. That's not great. I moved my monitors and I realized my light is about to fall off my monitor. Anyway,
you're joining the dark side.
it is the best piece of Star Wars content involving a Jedi in a long time. In a long time. So I seriously think that this is solid. I know that Dave Filoni has pretty much asked for creative control of this series, and I believe he has got that green lit so that he is pretty much running this show, and I think he's going to do his best to make one of the best TV shows that Disney Plus has ever put out for Star Wars, at the same time trying to fix all of the fucking mistakes that has ever been done. So I've already seen some wild fan theories about a bunch of characters named, characters we've already met, who they could be in the future timeline of Star Wars, because this obviously takes place episode 9, 10, 11. That's where this timeline takes place. So obviously we have got like old Luke Skywalker around, which is kind of funny because Luke ages very quickly. Ahsoka doesn't look like she aged a day since she last saw Luke Skywalker, which might be my only issue if there's something like that happens where they meet each other again. But
I wasn't sure about the timeline. Wait, how much further from like the Mandalorian are we here?
Oh, a while.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was just like in the same thing because they are building to that like crossover Dave Filoni Star Wars film, right? So I thought that like all of them would come together, which wouldn't really work if she's in the future here. So I don't know what the plan is there, but okay. Look, I just gotta catch up with Clone Wars, and especially I think for this relevant what's relevant.
I don't think it's
Sabine Wren is Rebels.
I don't think it's like it's not like mid like 9, 10, 11. It's like just before that. So it's prior to that, but that's kind of like the timeline where it's closer to than sort of the end of Return of the Jedi. So it is in a place where it's kind of like I think timeline wise, Luke has already built his temple to like go train. I can't even remember Kylo Ren's real name. Ben. Solo. To be trained as a Jedi.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure like Rey's born. There's all that jazz. Like this is ready to take place because obviously the Empire has fallen. And there's still some people who are who are aligned with the Empire, because we saw that in episode 2, 1. I can't remember which one it was. Exactly, where they kind of have those people who shoot them up at the base.
Yeah.
For their
I mean, I also forgot that like Mandalorian is also said after 6. It's after.
Yeah. So it's during that period.
Return of the Jedi.
But I'm pretty sure it's a while later. From when we last saw Ahsoka.
Right.
Because
so they're probably just going to skip ahead with Mandalorian then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this could set up a decent entryway into episode 9, 10, 11, and could maybe give some backstory to characters that we would like to have more backstory on.
Right.
Okay. I don't know. I've read some fan theories that I like. I've read some fan theories that I don't like. I'm all fan theoried up. I've also read way too many like those are fan fictions storylines. So yeah.
I'd read a fan fiction storyline for what's her name, Sabine Wren, because my God, that's a good casting. Holy shit! And I don't want to go further into that, but yeah, I think that's all you've been watching.
That's it.
Yeah, I've been watching a couple of things. Again, gonna probably do a bonus video to talk about like the new Nick Cage film, Sympathy of the Devil. There's a Michael Cera film called The Adults. Miguel Wants to Fight, another little Hulu production that was quite interesting. And I watched some really bad films, What Comes Around, Bad Things, and The List. Don't ask me why I watched these. I don't want to justify it. There's no justification for it, but I did. But I also watched Blue Beetle, the latest outing in the DC EU now. I think it's not the EU anymore. They have left. They have Brexited out of the EU. No extended universe anymore. And I think this is supposedly kind of more of a transition point to the new era under James Gunn. But I don't know, considering how poorly this did at the box office this last week, how much of this character we will see, especially in a standalone film. Hopefully he will return because it's fun. It's better than The Flash. It's better than the last few films. It's probably the best DC film since The Suicide Squad. But that's not really saying much because it's been on such a like a low quality point similar to the MCU. But I think here you get a really generic superhero story that's kind of a mixture of like Iron Man and Spider-Man and a bunch of like different characters. It does have its own identity a bit and some characters to root for, but I wouldn't call it like a promising like feature start for this new DCU. But it's all right if you're interested if you're into superhero stuff, then you probably won't like it as much. I think if it's an entry point for you, then it's like, oh, this is really good. I'm seeing this for the first time. But if you are into superhero films, then you're like, oh, I've seen this like 20 times before. But it's okay. Then on Netflix, there was The Monkey King, an animated film that's about the Monkey King, and he is, I think, like, I've seen this in recent years. This is like a game where this Chinese folklore tale or whatever, I'm not too familiar with it, is like the Monkey King is challenging the gods by like, I don't know, having like a staff, and he fights people, and he's kind of a bit of a dickhead. He's arrogant, but that's essentially a story. I don't know, there's not a ton going on, and this as well, it's like a bunch of like fighting, him being a dick the entire time, and that's the movie, and it was all right. Wasn't good, but yeah, some background entertainment. Same goes for Vacation Friends 2. I don't know, Lachlan, if in 2021 you sought out this John Cena little Ray Harry. It's all right. It's crazy. It's like the same type of humor where they go on vacation, they meet someone crazy, and do a bunch of crazy stuff, and then it transitions back into their normal lives, and they want to keep that under control. Here, they've already been friends, so they need to introduce like some new crazy people in it. That's essentially like the gimmick of this. There's a dad that comes back for one of the characters that is like a criminal. And it does like the comedy thing that I really don't like. That's like character does something impossible. And it's like, and the tension is all there, and it gets solved by just someone being perfect or something really something implausible happening, and that's the source of the comedy. And they do it like a couple of times in the first one and in the second one, and it's just really not funny. And it's just like aggressively unfunny as well in this. It's yeah, really not good. But something that was quite decently entertaining was the new Adam Sandler produced and also starring film called You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah, which stars like Adam Sandler's wife and his two daughters, and one of them, the younger one, having her own Bat Mitzvah and all of the drama that surrounds that. And I think it's pretty good. It's actually like it's surprisingly well done. It has like some generic tropes that you get I guess, if you are in an Adam Sandler production. But it's got a bit of heart as well, so I would actually give a light recommendation to that film. But yeah, that's all I've been watching. And Lachlan, I think for you can skip out on all 4 of those. I don't think I would recommend any of them to you directly. But yeah, that's that. Apart from Sympathy for the Devil, you might even enjoy that. Although it's not a good film, but it's got Nick Cage in it, so maybe that sells it to you.
Have you seen Sound of Freedom? Is that worth seeing?
Yeah. No, it's not good. It might be worth seeing for the case, for the reason that it's like been doing really well at domestic box office in the States. I think it's like doing better than like Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones, which is crazy. But yeah, it's like thriller type of story about child trafficking that has a bit of controversy surrounding it, because it's not like all really factual the way that it depicts stuff, but I mean that's all based on true events type of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the messaging behind it is a bit more annoying than the film itself. It's fine. It's not like laughably bad or anything. It's a decently made movie. But yeah, that's that. Let's talk about an actual great movie, my possible favorite film of the year so far, and it has a great chance of actually being that by the end of it. So I'm gonna, I guess, spoil my thoughts here already. But Lachlan, could you read us the logline for Past Lives?
Nora and Hae Sung, 2 deeply connected childhood friends, are west apart after Nora's family emigrates from South Korea. 2 decades later, they are reunited in New York for one fateful week as they confront notions of destiny, love, and the choices that make a life in this heart-rendering modern romance.
Oh, that's very sweet. Lachlan, thank you so much for reading that. I think this logline is like, this movie is really hard to describe in a logline because it is so subtle in its notions of the things that it lists here that it definitely depicts. But it's like when you describe it like this, it sounds kind of pretentious, if I'm being honest. But maybe this movie is also a bit pretentious because I liked it a lot. It comes from first-time director Celine Song, and is really closely based on her own experience of immigration and the connections she had to her home country in South Korea. You can really feel that throughout the whole movie. It has been received so far really positively, landing in the IMDb top 50. Technically, it doesn't really show up there, but it should be around place 100 with an 8.3 average rating. But also, more notably and more importantly, on Letterboxd, it's at spot 127 with a 4.3 average rating. On Metacritic, it has gotten a 94. That's really, really high, and I mean, it deserves it, so I won't fault them for that. But it's also a movie that doesn't overstay its welcome with 106 minutes. It comes from the studio A24, or I guess it was picked up there after its Sundance premiere this year. There was no details about the budget that I could find that were verified, but it's made 11 million so far at the box office in the States alone, but it is, for example, just now this week rolling out in international markets here for me in Switzerland. I do have a poster for it as well, by the way, but my cats kind of started playing with it and they ripped it apart on the wall. I don't know what's been happening, but yeah, that's what's happened. But yeah, it is also now out on VOD, so for anyone who wants to see it and has access to a VPN, you can definitely get it somehow. So go seek it out, because we will be talking full on spoilers for this movie. And Lachlan, before we jump into like some actual like discussion points and questions that I have to you that are maybe a bit more philosophical than than our usual reviews, what did you make of the movie overall?
It was stunning. However, it did take me a little bit to get into it. I'm not gonna lie. I actually watched this in 2 parts. I started watching it on, I think it was Thursday or Friday. I think it was Friday. I started watching it on Friday, and I just was not in the right mood to watch a film like this. So I had to stop, and I was only about 20 to 30 minutes in, and it doesn't really get rolling, I would say, until about 45 to an hour into this film, which this film is only 106 minutes long. So we're not talking a very long runtime. But it did take me a bit to get into it. When I started rewatching it this afternoon, or started to finish it off this afternoon, I rewinded about 10 minutes back so that I was still kind of where I was, and it pulled me in. It really grabbed me all of a sudden, which was shocking because when I stopped watching it on Friday, I was reading, people were like, how did you get engaged with this so quickly? Because people are talking about how they instantly fell back into their seats in the cinema while watching it. They were just absorbed by this story. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I didn't get it. I don't see why. But it's a great example of how your mood and your mindset of any particular day can affect how you actually perceive a film and what it's trying to do and what story it's trying to tell. All of a sudden, I'm in. So I start watching it. And my God, was it stunning. It was really naughty rooting for these guys because you don't, they shouldn't, right? She's committed. He's not with a girl, but is. Yeah. But we want them to be together.
No, well, to me, I think pretty early on, for me, the experience was I want all three of them to be happy, come out of this like the least bit hurt. That's kind of the emotion I had. So I wasn't really as invested in the reuniting. They obviously all have like chemistry with each other. Even the two guys have in between the two of them, like they mentioned in the bar scene later on. But I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about that part of the romance so much as this was also about them like as holistically as like people and how they experience the world and how they grow and how they change as people as they grow up and how they grow apart and different versions of the same person that you know for one part and then you don't know them anymore. There's so many interesting concepts, and I rewatched this film last night because I really wanted it to be fresh for this discussion. And the first time around, I did see it in a theater, so there was no ability for me to like pause and take in. But this time around, I think it took me at least 2 hours to watch the film because sometimes I just wanted to like rest on a moment and really take it in. And there's so much depth in a lot of the scenes where I just wanted to read something like into the way that it's framed. Like for example, when they first when they reunite in New York, and there's that quick cutting point. Like I think the editing is something that really stands out in this film, where it uses those like quick hints of a flashback that we've seen, not a flashback, but like a previous moment in the movie that we've already experienced, that is like also now visually tied back to the current moment that is happening for these characters. And I think like one of the things that it uses is when they reunite, it shows them as kids playing in this like stone thing where there's a bunch of cubes and they can look through them and they're like looking at each other and playing. And then they're in front of like this larger stone structure that's behind them. And it feels like these characters have grown up, but also the surrounding circumstances around them have kind of grown, and there's less. I don't know. It's just like a specific scene that I really read a lot into, but there's a ton of that stuff in this film, which really makes me love it because I can experience it just for the emotional engagement that I have with these characters, but I can also try to really take a lot away from myself. And it's kind of been the experience for everyone I've talked to about it. Like a lot of people get really emotional towards the end of the film, but then also the aftermath that is like the experience of this film is also like the discussions that come from it, the similar experience that people have had meeting people and then disconnecting from them. There's a ton of stories that kind of surface from this art kind of bringing this out. So yeah, I mean, I've already said it. I absolutely love this film. And it did not disappoint, although there was a ton of hype from it coming out of Sundance, people raving about it, and I'm glad it lived up to that. But yeah, that's pretty much my condensed thoughts. Lachlan, where do you wanna go from here? What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I have no idea. There's a lot to talk about. Okay. I wouldn't say there's a lot to talk about, but I think there's a lot of standout things to talk about.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You mean like there's not a ton of like big moments that are worth like breaking down in a review form? Yeah. That's definitely the case.
There's just a lot to break down for this film.
I think like what I just did is like breaking it down in moments, and I think that's usually like less interesting as an audience listening to a review, because it's less working with our experiences, and it's more descriptive of what you've already experienced in the theater. Something I do want to quickly shout out is just like something that they do right is the tech stuff, in that 12 years later, after they're kids and they're kind of reuniting digitally through Facebook and Skype, and it's a little touch, but getting like, we've both lived through that era where you use that stuff and they get it perfectly. They just get it perfectly, and it's so rare that a movie gets that. I was like, I'll applaud it for that. That's really well done.
We could also, I guess, praise the setting. For the most part, this film is set in New York City, which isn't the most romantic city on earth. And I think that they have shot it in such a way that makes it quite beautiful. So I must say, I am quite impressed by the cinematography, first and foremost, of the actual landscape of New York. It isn't the prettiest place in the world, but it does make it quite beautiful, strategically showing off some very pretty landscapes and some very iconic landscapes, I should say, as well. And also just shooting it at, golden hour makes it look stunning as well. But it's not just the landscape that you get. I would find that this film, it's quite interesting. It doesn't put you with them. It often has you, for the majority of the film, away on a long lens, and it kind of comes in to that conversation. Which
it's exactly how the movie starts,
nice.
That's like how it
great.
presents the whole story, yeah. I think that's kind of consistent, right? With the two onlookers discussing who they are to each other, and that's kind of what you're doing the whole... It's a bit meta that way. It's like, at first I didn't really like those framing devices where, I don't know, the entry point to that story. But it does it... I don't know, it works for me ultimately, where I don't dislike it anymore towards the end of it all, because I am exactly doing that. I'm wondering, like, what are these people to each other? And yeah, kind of nicely ties it together.
In talking about framing, leads me on to how much of this film is framed looking through a window, through a mirror, through a hole in something where the story actually is taking place. That is another really cool element that I loved, because it's just, again, it seems like we're peeping into this relationship. We shouldn't be a part of it in any kind of way. It feels like we should just move on and not kind of look, but you can't help but look. Like, there's some great shots where they, on the train, you're not in the same carriage. You're in a separate carriage looking through the two windows into the next. When Nora's sleeping, her husband closes the door on the taxi and through the window. That's also really awesome. In her apartment when she arrives home from the first outing with her husband, again, it's shot through a window.
And then the mirror on the side. Or do you mean like the first? Oh no, maybe it's the second meeting
and then the second one when he's on the side, she's in the mirror, she's not there. And it's the same thing when it comes to framing nothing with a window. One of the shots right at the end when it's just Arthur and Zhang, it's like, it's their backs. You don't see them at the front, right? You've got the back of them. You can see the people that were probably having that conversation earlier. You can see a mirror for the bartender's face, but like you're not actively in this conversation, which makes you feel like, should I be listening to them talk about this? It feels too personal. So it's something that I really liked about that cinematography, is how personal it felt, but how intrusive I felt as a viewer watching these people's lives like unfold. I
mean, it's also how like Hae-sung feels for the most part of it, because he is in a way intruding. But like the discussions that Nora and him have towards the end, where they in the bar, where they basically are talking about like what they mean to each other, and like how he's wondering the what ifs of their potential lives, and she says she never was that person in the future, because he never met that person. They disconnected when they were kids. And I think that's like what it ultimately leads to, is that like that really nice moment between the two of them where they're like speculating what they've been in previous lives. And it's like in a way how she uses Inyoung in the first thing was like, it's just something that Koreans say to seduce someone, and here that they're using it to cope with the connection that they have, that they could have had and they might have had in a different life, but they're not having it right now. And it's really interesting how like that cultural stuff, like how they use it to essentially cope, or really they don't seem, at least Nora doesn't seem unhappy with her life at all. You get a bit less on Ye-sung. But they end up in a place where they're obviously sad that they are not in the same place anymore, because they are so connected, but they have resolved kind of what was between them. So this whole movie feels incredibly compassionate for all of its characters and how they interact with each other as well, which is something that we, I think, rarely see, because it is usually framed in a way, it's like, because these people are destined to be together, it's okay if someone else who wasn't meant to be that person gets cut out, like the American like husband in this, right? But that's not what this movie is about. It's way more about like how we change as people, and how we grow, and how like the life that we currently live is the life that we're supposed to live because we're living it. It doesn't, you don't need to be in this constant state of what if. And I think it tackles that like beautifully. Another idea that comes up is like the dreaming, the like disconnect that the husband feels from that like Arthur feels from Nora, because she dreams in Korean, and I think that like brought up a whole different thing that sent me down a spiral of, is like the subconscious part of you, like this disconnected thing that's not really, because it's connected to you, but you're not steering it, and how much of that is like, how could you even be connected to something like that? Like he wants that because he feels like maybe she'll slip away, and she has like different dreams that in her, when she's conscious, she's kind of hiding them. Yeah, I don't know, that whole thing was also interesting to me. This whole movie made me like want to stop and just think about stuff for a couple of minutes, and it did. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Lachlan, if you ever like encountered anything close to that, like in that fate thing with someone, or where you have in a similar like position where you can kind of connect to what they were going through.
Like, can I relate to an experience that these characters have had?
Yeah, where you feel like you have that connection with someone, maybe, or like something slipped away, or I don't know, anything that kind of translates it to it. Because I felt similar in that way, where it's a nice coping thing with maybe people who passed away, at least for me, when you feel like, not in reincarnation, but like some kind of presence that is still somewhat there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, I don't know, I just found the concept of Inyung kind of nice.
It could just be me though, because I'm not a big believer in like fate, if that makes any sense.
Me neither.
Like I'm not a big believer in that, so for me I would say no. I don't think I've ever had, like, I've definitely met people like once-offs who I've just connected with immediately because we have similar like outlooks on life and similar likes and dislikes. The best one is like, my favorite thing when I go and meet someone for the first time is I'll always ask, what's your favorite movie of all time? And then people will sit there, and then I'll say, don't worry, because this is literally a character test right now. If you tell me your favorite movie is, Before Sunrise, I'm going to be like, okay, cool. This person probably has a very nice connection to somebody that they love. They're like, yada, yada. But if someone tells me their favorite movie of all time is like, I don't know, Human Centipede 3, I'm going to be like, okay, you're a bit of a weird man. I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I guess like I've had connections with people before, but I wouldn't say that I'd say that this is fate that we've met each other. It's just people. It's a small world. Like, honestly, there's going to be similarities. There's only so many ways you can do a certain thing, and there's only so many ways a person can be a bit different. But it's a mix match of similarities that you'll have with people, and
I think that's like nothing to do with the film, though. But I think that like the like more modern age of like online dating is sometimes like a bit similar to this, where you grow really close to someone, similar to what they do with like over Skype and talking to someone without like actually ever anything coming from it, and it's this weird like pretty intimate connection that you might form with someone without like, I don't know, still having that distance between them. So I feel like there a lot of people might be able to relate to it as well, and like what I found myself a bit in there as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to ask you in here. I think it does all of it really well. A shout out to the child performers. I'm usually a hater when I don't like it, and I definitely verbalize it. They were really good in this. I liked them a lot. I also liked how.
Can I get a replay on that? Did Ewan just say he liked the child performers? Wow, incredible stuff.
They were great.
This movie
and
must have done wonders for you, bro.
Teo Yo, the actor for Hae Sung, also kind of looked at, because they shot the child stuff before, looked at the performance of the kid and kind of modeled, kind of took that for his performance, the way that he usually stands and he kind of leans forward a bit, the way that he, like his shoulders, he's really insecure in that way, like at least physically, although he is like I'd say rather tall man, is like taller than Arthur and stuff like that. He still feels like smaller in the way that he behaves, and I think that's something that you wouldn't really point out when you're watching it, but it's definitely something you can feel. You can kind of feel his insecurity and him stumbling around, and they carry that through from child to adult pretty seamlessly. What do you think about the ending, the sidewalk there? Were you like rooting for something specific to happen, or what was your thoughts going through that scene?
I wasn't rooting for something to happen.
Yeah.
I was...
Good on you.
The film ends in such an interesting way where you're watching this story where you know she's committed, he's committed, he likes her, I believe she likes him, because they've come to this agreement that it's like, what if we didn't do this? This is the life we're living, but what if? And they know that they would work together, and we know that they are meant to be together. Maybe not work together, but they know that they wanted to be together. And it hurts to know that they can't, because it won't work. It's not practical. He lives in Korea, she lives in New York. One of them could move, but one of them is sacrificing everything to be with the other. And that's what separated them in the first place. And that was mainly her saying, hey, Nora going, hey, I don't want to do this because I need to focus on myself. And what's interesting about that is that at the end, it's really Hae Sung going, no, I don't think I would work. You're the one who changes too much in my world. You stay here. So for me, what I liked about this ending is that it was an understanding between the two, and it was an agreement between the two that, yes, we are soulmates, but in this reality, we're not.
Yeah, the concept of In Young, maybe in this they don't have the like 8,000 layers of whatever, but they might have had it in a different life. Yeah, like how he describes it is also really poignant and beautiful. Where it's like in this life you're someone who leaves for me, and for Arthur you're someone who stays. It's such a nice way of putting it. Where they I guess not in the same circumstance that they. I think also what they do well is something really subtle too, about like the cultural points, of course, of like he lives there with his family, he's so Korean, like that scene where she basically says, oh, he's so Korean like 15 times. It's kind of funny. Like Greta Lee really brings out that performance. She's a ton of fun to listen to as she's like trying to, I guess, make sense of her thoughts there. But like immediately when we next see her parents have completely gone from her life. So her lifestyle has become incredibly American. Obviously, her parents are still in Canada. They didn't like migrate down to the States, I think, right? It becomes way more of like she has the cultural identity of the United States a bit more, and her connection that ties her back to South Korea because a whole family moved is only Hae Sung. So when she like picks up Korean again and starts to like write it out as she struggles with it when she's like 23, I think it's also like he symbolizes the connection she has back to her country, and maybe that's also more what makes the connection strong for her, because she is someone who like kind of left and is making a life in a different place. So he could also like a bit more symbolize that for her at that point in her life. And on the on the other side of the same coin is for Hae Sung. She's like the thing of like moving away and doing this potential of a different life that maybe he doesn't even want to lead, because he doesn't seem to be someone who wants to leave Seoul. So I think it goes about like this whole subject in such an adult way without involving any sort of drama where it doesn't need to have drama. And it's such a change of pace for what we usually get in romance film, where all of the passion just boils up until it explodes. But here it just feels like way more I don't know, it just feels way more real and grounded, and I can really appreciate that in good romance, which is what I'm a sucker for. I love a good romance story. That's pretty much all my thoughts, Lachlan, unless you want to add something to it. I'm down to share my 5-star rating. Done. Yeah, it's a 5-star. Immediately 5 banger. My first watch. On my second watch, it's my type of genre. So I really adored it. What about you, Lachlan?
I might have to give it a rewatch eventually in one big sitting, from start to end. But for me, I'm giving it a 4.
Hey, I can cope with that. We still have enough layers of Inyung between us to keep this thing going.
If I said 3.5, what would have happened?
I would have been hurt. I would have been definitely hurt if I said 3.5. I think a 4 is what I expected from you for this movie. And yeah, it's a good rating. It's a really good movie. I think a 4-star is really good, and it's a number after all. We just had like a discussion about it. That's the more important part of it. So remember that, guys and gals and everyone. Anyways, if you were to pair up this movie after you've grabbed a couple of tissues maybe and drenched or dried your tears, what would you pair up with it?
Well, I would say grab some more tissues and grab some more popcorn, because you're going to be crying even further when you hear of the sad separation from any of these 1, 2, 3, 4 quad features that I'm about to do for you.
Quad features?
Because I couldn't decide on one.
Okay.
I'm doing a quad feature. I'm doing La La Land, Lost in Translation, 500 Days of Summer, and Brokeback Mountain. All movies where 2 people can't be together for whatever reason and don't get together. Well, they get together, but some of them don't get together. Some of them get together, but some of them don't get together. But most of them, can't be together by the end. Maybe in another life they can be together because they're soulmates. But in the reality of these movies, they are not. Also, Ewan, I knew you were going to pick one of these movies as your double feature. I knew it.
I'm so obvious. I picked one of the before films. I think the one that makes the most sense is the one in between, Before Sunset, the one in Paris, because it is about like 45, maybe 50 minutes in, starts the thing where Hae Sung has arrived in New York. And essentially, Before Sunset is this entire thing that plays out that if you haven't seen it, I actually don't want to spoil it. But this movie concludes in a way where it's, I guess I am spoiling it. It's a bit open-ended. I think it's implied, but it's not really giving you a conclusive answer. And I think that's really nice, and it ties kind of perfectly into this film, where I think both of these films have a happy ending, but one of the endings feels happier, if that makes sense. And it's my favorite trilogy of all time, so go give the whole Before trilogy a watch. If you haven't seen Before Sunrise, then you gotta to watch Before Sunset, then you have to watch 2 films. So I guess depending on how many of the Before films you've seen, this is also a triple feature, not a double feature. So lots of stuff to watch this week. Lachlan, I think you mentioned it earlier. I don't know if I brought it up again. I'm going to Venice. I'm going to the Venice Film Festival.
Show off.
And we'll be on break. We'll be on break next week, but then we'll be back for the Venice Film Festival recap, not with Lachlan. So Lachlan, you are getting 2 weeks off from the podcast. But in the meantime, we will be premiering our new podcast series, a return of Roll That Again, where we actually talked about that very series that I just described. So it's the perfect time to actually pair it up as a double feature. Over the span of me being in Venice, you'll get those Roll That Again episodes for a bunch of films. We talked about Blade Runner, the original Ridley Scott film, and the Before trilogy. And then in time for the release of Equalizer 3, we talked about the first 2 films of that series as well. And then we will be recording, or I will be recording, not with Lachlan, but with upcoming festival correspondent Kevin. We'll be discussing a couple more films there. So happy to be launching this kind of side spin-off podcast once again. And yeah, we'll be chatting about some older films, but there's a couple of new releases that are coming out in the next 2 weeks. One of them being the Netflix live-action adaptation of the anime One Piece. Gonna be interesting to watch that one. Lachlan, are you planning to check it out when it releases?
Maybe. I might just wait to see what everyone says, and then I'll pitch in for an episode or 2.
Yeah, I might watch it before I even see one episode of the anime. I don't know how sacrilegious that is, but it's what I'll be doing. Then on September 1st, we get the Equalizer 3. And on September 8th, we are getting the 3rd outing as well in not an action franchise, but in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I recently actually watched these 2. I watched it earlier this year because Kelly told me to, and I did. And I didn't really love them, but I guess they're getting a 3rd film. And then there's another outing in the Nun series. The Nun 2 comes out on September 8th as well. But yeah, like I said, we'll be back on September 12th with a recap for the Venice Film Festival. In the meantime, you can find, I guess, some short reviews on my personal YouTube channel that's linked below. And in between our screenings, we'll make sure to post our brief thoughts and written reviews over on Letterboxd. Also follow us on our socials on Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. We'll be sharing, I guess, our experience from Venice there as well. But then when we're back, Lachlan, I think we got a supersized episode coming up because we'll be talking about a couple of films that released and also have now released in Australia as well, namely one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem will finally be out, and I think you'll probably give it a try, right?
Of course,
yes.
100%.
Then you'll also be watching Equalizer 3, and I might even get you to see A Haunting in Venice after I've been back from Venice. It couldn't be in a better theme then. And then movie I already saw, and Lachlan, I think you got a screener for it as well, is Theater Camp. So we'll have like a supersized episode talking about a bunch of films when we're back on September 18th. But yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to have a ton of stuff to talk about with the writer's strike.
I hope we have a ton to discuss. By then they meet again. Otherwise, like, I think it was like for a month or so, there was just no update inside. But yeah, it was a bit of an overview. We did this. I hope you appreciate it. Let us know what you thought of it, and let us know what you thought of the movies we discussed here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Lachlan, I'll see you in 2 weeks. So
enjoy Venice, Ewan.
Thank you. All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bastard. Bye, everybody.